In today's video, we'll talk about weird green kids, rats that shit together, and much more. So stay with me until the end of this video. Let's start. The Green Children of Woolpit. The legend of the Green Children of Woolpit concerns two children of unusual skin color who reportedly appeared in the village of Woolpit, England, sometime in the 12th century. The children, found to be brother and sister, were of generally normal appearance except for the green color of their skin. They spoke in an unknown language and would eat only raw broad beans. Eventually, they learned to eat other food and lost their green color, but the boy was sickly and died soon after his sister was baptized. The girl adjusted to her new life, but she was considered to be very wanton and impudent. After she learned to speak English, the girl explained that she and her brother had come from a land where the sun never shone, and the light was like twilight. According to one version of the story, she said that everything there was green. According to another, she said it was called St. Martin's Land. Some explanations say that this narrative descends from folklore, describing an imaginary encounter with the inhabitants of a fairy otherworld. Medievalist Geoffrey Jerome Cohen offers a different kind of historical explanation, arguing that the story is an oblique account of the racial difference between the English and the indigenous Britons. But for me, the biggest mystery is knowing if these kids were supposed to be green or if this is another bug coming from Ubisoft. Story: The Poison Guide. Giulia Tofana was a serial killer who lived in Italy. She invented Tofana water, a colorless, odorless, tasteless, and highly toxic poison, capable of causing an apparently natural death to the victim in a few days, which she sold mainly to women trapped in violent marriages, having encouraged her daughter or sister, Giulia Tofana, for this activity. According to one version of events, Giulia Tofana fled to Rome and set up a poisoning ring that began to sell this poison to women who wanted to escape abusive or inconvenient spouses. There may have been 6 women in this poisoning ring active in the 1650s, including Giulia Tofana, who took over after Giulia's death. Later, a client, the Countess of Seri, used all the liquid in the bottle containing the poison to get rid of her husband, arousing suspicion in the dead man's parents. They led them to Giulia Tofana, who was arrested and tortured, having admitted that she had sold the poison, mainly in Rome, during the plague period, which made it even more difficult to identify the poisonings, and also enough bottles to kill 600 people in the period from 1633 to 1651. On July 5, 1659, she was condemned and executed in Campo das Flores in Rome, along with her daughter or sister, Giulia Tofana, and 3 other women guilty of poisoning their husbands. You can find references about her story in any game like World of Warcraft. The Black Dinner. In Scotland around the year 1437, King James I dies and leaves his son James II as heir, who at that time was still too young to assume the throne. From that moment on, disputes began between the nobles of the court to decide who would have the custody of the boy king and, consequently, the power to dominate the kingdom of Scotland. The Douglas, the most powerful clan in Scotland, became the king's regents and protectors until he reached the age of majority, with the purpose of overthrowing the power of the Douglas and ruling the kingdom. Earl Archibald of Douglas, who was already old and sick, did not lead the kingdom satisfactorily, and this means that Queen Joan Beaufort, mother of James II, ends up going to Edinburgh Castle, which causes the power past the hands of Sir. It so happens that Count Archibald dies during these disputes and leaves his sons as successors. This event makes Sir William and Sir Alexander decide to eliminate the successors of Count Archibald and gain power for themselves, since the power of the Douglas still influenced the government of Scotland. Then, young people are invited to a dinner at Edinburgh Castle in 1440, and there they are executed, accused of treason against the Kingdom of Scotland. William would have invited the young Douglases to a dinner with King Jamie too, and in the middle of this dinner, a black bull's head would have been served at the table, which according to customs meant the death of the guests, and after that, the Douglas would have murdered them, under the gaze of King James II, who at the time would have been 10 years old. I'm not going to put any clips from Game of Thrones here or all the artists that Deadmau5 sucked to death, but you guys get the message. The Dancing Plague. In July 1518, a woman by the name of Frau Trophea began to dance fervently in a street in France. Trophea kept up this constant dancing for a week straight. Soon, 36 others joined in on the dancing chaos. By August of that very year, the dancing plague had seized 400 individuals, with dancers now succumbing to exhaustion. Reports indicate that a number of them tragically died from strokes or heart attacks. No one knew what was causing this reaction, which meant no one understood how to remedy this situation either. By early September, the outbreak began to subside, as the dancers were sent to a mountain shrine to pray for absolution. Events similar to this are said to have occurred throughout the medieval age, including 11th century in Germany, where it was believed to be the result of demonic possession or divine judgment. Another event occurred in 15th century Italy. A woman was bitten by a tarantula, the venom making her dance convulsively. Modern theories about what happened include food poisoning, stress-induced mass hysteria, or even demonic possession. But the truth is that to this day no one knows what really happened. You can see the reference of this phenomenon in Elder Rings, where you find a bunch of undead dancing non-stop for no reason. The Rat King. Martin Luther once said, "Finally, there is the Pope, the King of Rats, right at the top." Later, the term is going to be used to describe this phenomenon. Rat King is a term that determines when a certain number of rats become attached to each other by the tail, glued together by blood, dirt, ice, excrement, or simply snared. Rodents united in this way are supposed to grow at the same time, experiencing a calcification in the tail bones that ends up fusing the animals together forever. The number of fused mice varies, with 32 being the highest number of fused mice ever found. The king of rats formed naturally by many of these rodents are rare. The phenomenon is particularly associated with Germany, where a greater number of cases have been reported. The possible explanations ranging from the rats getting stuck together during birth and glued later, to healthy rats deliberately knotting themselves to weaker rats to make a nest. Some zoologists remain skeptical, saying that while theoretically possible, the rats would not be able to survive in such a condition for a long time. However, experts support the idea of isolated freak accidents due to the existence of occasional well-observed cases involving squirrels. But until today, this phenomenon remains a mystery since the Middle Ages. Rat King was portrayed in the amazing, fun, well-produced game The Last of Us 2, which I have never played. Do the like thing and subscribe. Thanks.